What happens when a millionaire's wife humiliates his childhood nanny at a family dinner? The tension in the room was palpable, and no one expected what happened next. What was supposed to be a simple, elegant evening quickly turned into a shocking moment that would change everything. But it wasn't the wife's cruel words that would be remembered. It was her husband's next move, one that left everyone, including the family, speechless. Before we dive in, tell us, where are you watching from? Lydia, the millionaire's wife, had it all: wealth, power, and the perfect life, or so it seemed. She married into luxury, but something about her childhood nanny, Emma, always rubbed her the wrong way. Emma, a quiet, humble woman, had been there for Lydia's husband, Jacob, since he was a child. She raised him, cared for him, and became like family. But Lydia didn't see it that way. The family dinner had been meant to celebrate Jacob's recent business success. The mansion was beautifully decorated, the air full of excitement. But as soon as Lydia laid eyes on Emma, something shifted. Maybe it was jealousy or insecurity, but Lydia saw an opportunity to assert her position. What followed was an uncomfortable exchange that no one saw coming. The tension between the two women simmered until Lydia's words cut deep, leaving Emma humiliated in front of the whole family. The dinner started off like any other, with guests mingling and the table laid out in its usual opulence. But Lydia's mind was far from the sparkling crystal glasses and extravagant dishes. She couldn't help but feel a simmering frustration as Emma, the nanny who had practically raised Jacob, walked in. Emma's presence was always a reminder of something Lydia couldn't shake: her insecurities. Jacob, her husband, was a self-made millionaire, and she had married him knowing he had a deep, almost protective connection with Emma. Lydia had never really understood it, but she had accepted it. What she couldn't stand was how Emma seemed to fit so easily into their family, as if she belonged just as much as Lydia did. Emma was there when Jacob was growing up, a constant in his life, and that kind of bond was hard to replace. As the night wore on, Lydia noticed how Jacob seemed to be more engaged with Emma than he was with her. She watched from across the table, her eyes narrowing with each laugh shared between the two. Was it just nostalgia or something more? Maybe she was overthinking it, but Lydia's patience was wearing thin. She had worked hard to be the wife of a millionaire. She had earned her place, or at least that's what she told herself every day. The turning point came after dessert when the conversation shifted to old memories. Emma had been sharing funny anecdotes about Jacob's childhood, something Lydia had always found oddly charming yet irritating. This time, however, Emma's story was different. She spoke about a moment when Jacob was in high school, how he had confided in her about a tough decision, and how he had always trusted her opinions more than anyone else's. That was when Lydia snapped. "How sweet," Lydia said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "A boy who needed his nanny more than his wife." The words came out before Lydia could stop them, sharp and cutting, laced with an edge of jealousy. The room fell silent as everyone at the table turned to look. Jacob froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. Emma's face went pale, and for a moment it looked like she might not respond at all. But Lydia could feel the tension rise, and she couldn't back down now. It had been said, and the atmosphere had shifted. "Excuse me?" Emma finally managed to say, her voice trembling. "You think I've overstepped?" The entire family could feel the awkwardness, but Lydia wasn't done. "It's just funny, don't you think?" she said with a thin smile. "How someone who was never family somehow gets to share all those intimate moments. Your place was to look after him, not to be his emotional support." Jacob's face hardened. He glanced between the two women, but his eyes lingered on Emma. Lydia noticed it, and something in her snapped. She had to protect her place, her standing in the family. She couldn't let Emma think she was somehow more important than Lydia was. "Maybe that's why you don't know how to fit in with us," Lydia added, her voice now colder, more venomous. "You're just too used to being the help to realize where you actually belong." There was a hush around the table. Lydia's words were out in the open, hanging in the air, suffocating the room with discomfort. Emma, to her credit, didn't break down. She kept her back straight and her eyes locked with Lydia's. The silence stretched for what seemed like an eternity, until Jacob, finally breaking the tension, stood up. His chair scraped harshly against the floor as he rose. "Enough," he said, his voice sharp. It wasn't the tone of a man who had just finished a long, hard day at work. It was the tone of someone whose patience had finally been pushed to its limits. "Apologize," he ordered Lydia. The room collectively held its breath. Lydia's eyes widened and she blinked several times in shock, disbelief painting her face. "Excuse me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You want me to apologize to her?" "Yes, you do," Jacob replied. His words cut through the tension. "Emma is a part of this family. You have no right to speak to her like that. She has been here longer than you, and I won't have you disrespect her in my home." Lydia stared at him, stunned. This wasn't supposed to happen. She had expected the family to side with her, or at the very least for Jacob to brush it off and make peace. Instead, he had stood up for Emma, the woman who had raised him. The humiliation Lydia felt in that moment was palpable. Her chest tightened, her mind racing as she struggled to comprehend the situation. She had underestimated how deeply Jacob valued Emma. Emma, her face still pale, took a deep breath. "I don't want any apology," she said softly. "But I do want you to understand, Lydia, that I've always been here to support Jacob, not take his place. And I won't stand here while you try to undermine that." Lydia looked at Jacob, but his gaze remained unwavering. He wasn't looking at her with the tenderness he once did. It was as if the woman he married had revealed a side of herself he could no longer ignore. "I'm sorry," Lydia mumbled, barely above a whisper. The words didn't feel genuine, but she knew she had to say them to avoid further confrontation. The atmosphere in the room remained heavy, but the damage was done. The rift had been created. Lydia could sense that she had lost something, maybe not everything, but enough to make her question her place in the family. Jacob's next move would either mend the damage or perhaps drive the final wedge between them. Jacob stood in the middle of the tension-filled room, his fists clenched at his sides. His eyes never left Lydia, who stood across from him, still processing the sudden shift in the conversation. The dinner party, which had started off as a celebration, had now turned into something far more serious. Jacob's decision was no longer a choice. It was a necessity. "How dare you?" Lydia finally broke the silence, her voice trembling. The shock on her face was clear, and her disbelief was palpable. "You're going to stand there and tell me to apologize to her? After everything I've done for you? For this family?" Jacob took a step forward. "This isn't about me. This is about what's right. Emma has been with us for years, and you humiliated her in front of everyone. I won't stand by and let you tear down the people who matter to me." Lydia's face reddened, and she opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. The reality of the situation was sinking in. For the first time in their marriage, she realized Jacob wasn't just speaking out of loyalty to her. He was speaking out of his own convictions, and he wasn't going to back down. "You think I don't care about what you've done for me?" Jacob continued, his tone calm but firm. "But there's something you've forgotten. What matters to me more than anything is honesty and respect. Emma deserves that, and so do I." Lydia's hands trembled as she tried to gather herself. "So that's it then? You're taking her side over me? After all these years?" Her voice cracked with desperation, and Jacob could feel the sharpness of her words cut through the air. "I'm not taking sides, Lydia," Jacob replied, his voice steady. "I'm standing up for what's right. You've crossed a line, and I need you to understand that." Lydia stood frozen, her mind racing, processing everything he had said. The weight of his words felt like a slap across her face. She had always been the one in control. She had assumed that her position as Jacob's wife would protect her from any challenges. But now she was faced with a harsh reality. Her jealousy and insecurity had led her to destroy the one person who had been a constant in Jacob's life, and he was no longer willing to let her get away with it. "I've had enough of this," Jacob added. "You've hurt Emma, and now you need to make it right. I'm giving you the opportunity to apologize, to fix what you've broken. But if you don't, we can't move forward." For the first time in years, Lydia realized she had underestimated Jacob. Her power, her control, and the manipulations she had used to secure her position within the family were slipping away. The foundation she thought was unshakable was now crumbling beneath her. She looked over at Emma, who had stayed silent through the confrontation, her face pale but composed. The gravity of the situation finally hit Lydia. She wasn't just fighting for her position in the family anymore. She was fighting for the respect she had lost. Jacob's words hung in the air as the room fell into silence again. Lydia had been given a chance to redeem herself. Would she take it, or would the wedge between her and Jacob grow too deep? Just as the air between Lydia and Jacob became thick with tension, something unexpected happened. Lydia, still reeling from Jacob's words, stood there silently, her anger and hurt warring with the realization that Jacob was serious. He wasn't going to let her get away with this. No matter how much she tried to convince him it was just a misunderstanding. But there was more beneath the surface of their confrontation, something neither of them had anticipated. Jacob turned to face the rest of the family, who had been standing by in stunned silence, waiting for the next move. He looked at each of them, his gaze sweeping across the room. "I want to be clear," he said, his voice unwavering. "This isn't just about the incident tonight. It's about something I've been noticing for a while. Lydia, you've been making things harder than they need to be, and I can't keep ignoring it." Lydia's heart raced, her mind trying to process the words he just said. She had assumed she could control the narrative, but now Jacob was telling everyone what had been quietly building up under the surface. She didn't know how to respond. How could she? For the first time, Lydia realized that her actions had been so far-reaching, she had caused more damage than she thought. The twist came when Jacob turned to Emma, his childhood nanny, the one person Lydia had been trying to undermine. "Emma," Jacob said softly, "I've always known how important you've been to me. But I need you to know something that might surprise you. I've been making some changes to the will, and one of the most important changes involves you." The room went silent. Lydia's eyes widened in disbelief, and she felt the blood drain from her face. Was he really doing this? Was he actually going to include Emma in his will in a way that Lydia had never been included? Jacob continued, "I'm not doing this out of guilt. I'm doing this because it's right. Emma has been there for me when I didn't have anyone else. She deserves more than just thanks. She deserves security. She's family." Lydia, still in shock, could hardly find her voice. You're giving her part of the inheritance?" She finally managed, the words coming out slowly. "Yes," Jacob replied, his gaze still on Emma. "I've already made arrangements. I've made sure Emma is included in a way that reflects her place in this family. She's more than just a nanny. She's my confidant, my protector, and she's been part of my life long before I met you." Lydia felt her throat tighten. This was worse than she could have imagined. The rift she had tried to create, the divide she had worked so hard to keep, was now crumbling. She wasn't just fighting for respect anymore. She was fighting for her place in the family. Something Jacob was now redefining. The tension in the room was palpable. The family members who had been awkwardly standing by began exchanging glances. No one could believe what they had just heard. Jacob had taken a bold step, and it was clear that things were never going to be the same. Lydia's mind raced. What had she done? Was her jealousy and insecurity truly worth this? Was she about to lose everything she had worked so hard for? All of a sudden, the facade she had built, the one that kept her at the top, the one that had made her the perfect wife, was slipping through her fingers. Jacob wasn't done. "This isn't just about money," he said, turning to face everyone. "It's about understanding what it means to be loyal, to have a true place in this family. I know who has been there for me, and Emma has been there longer than anyone else." He glanced at Lydia one last time, and she could see the hurt in his eyes. "I hope you understand why I'm doing this." Lydia's world seemed to collapse around her. Everything she thought she knew, everything she assumed about their marriage was now in question. She had pushed too far, underestimated the strength of the bond between Jacob and Emma, and in doing so, she had set in motion a series of events she couldn't control. Her eyes flickered between Jacob and Emma, both of them standing there, united by something much stronger than just loyalty. And for the first time, Lydia realized she was no longer at the center of it all. The aftermath of Jacob's revelation settled over the family like a heavy cloud. The mansion, once filled with the sounds of clinking glasses and lively chatter, was now eerily quiet. Lydia sat there, feeling the weight of everything Jacob had said. The truth was undeniable. Her position in the family was no longer as secure as she had believed. Jacob's decision to include Emma in his will wasn't just a financial gesture, it was a statement. It was about respect, loyalty, and acknowledging the bonds that had been formed over decades. Lydia had spent so much time trying to prove her place, trying to outshine the woman who had been there for Jacob since childhood, that she had overlooked the true value of what Emma represented. Emma wasn't just a nanny, she was family. As the days passed, Lydia tried to salvage what was left of her relationship with Jacob. She apologized over and over, but it wasn't the apology that mattered. It was the realization that her actions had come from a place of insecurity, not from a place of genuine love. She had tried to push Emma away, but in doing so, she had only pushed herself further from Jacob. Jacob, for his part, was calm but firm. He had made his choice, and now he was living with the consequences of that choice. It wasn't about punishing Lydia, it was about doing what was right for his family. He had always known Emma's value, and he refused to let anyone undermine that. He also realized that his marriage with Lydia had been built on a shaky foundation, one based more on appearances than on mutual understanding. The family began to heal, slowly but surely. Jacob's siblings, who had always seen Emma as an important figure in their lives, rallied around her. They began to see Lydia in a different light, not as the woman they had once admired, but as someone whose priorities had been skewed by jealousy and pride. The shift in how they viewed Lydia was subtle but significant. As for Emma, she never wanted to be at the center of this drama. She had always respected Jacob's choices and had been happy to support him without seeking recognition. But now, with the changes in the family, she found herself in a more prominent role. Her relationship with Jacob remained strong, and for the first time in years, she felt truly appreciated for the years of loyalty and care she had given to the family. Lydia, meanwhile, faced the difficult reality of what her actions had cost her. She wasn't just fighting for her place in Jacob's life, she was fighting for her own identity. She had spent so much time trying to control the narrative and secure her position that she forgot what it meant to truly care for someone. In the end, her actions had caused a rift that could never fully be repaired. The moral of this story was clear. Loyalty, respect, and love are not things that can be bought or manipulated. They are earned through actions and genuine care, not through power plays or jealousy. Jacob's decision to stand by Emma, even when it meant confronting his wife, was a testament to the strength of their bond. In the end, it was a reminder that family isn't just about blood. It's about who you trust, who you stand by, and who you're willing to fight for. In the end, Lydia's arrogance and jealousy were exposed, and she realized too late what she had jeopardized. Jacob's decision to stand by Emma wasn't just about money. It was about love, loyalty, and respect for the people who have always been there. Emma had proven her worth through years of care and sacrifice, while Lydia's attempts to tear down the bonds that mattered only pushed her further away from the family she thought she controlled. Jacob's move shocked everyone, and Lydia's fall from grace was a reminder that no amount of wealth or status could replace genuine connections. In the end, the family healed, but it was clear that nothing would be the same. Lydia had to confront the person she had become and decide whether she could truly change or continue down the path of jealousy and pride. What would you do if you were in Jacob's shoes? Would you stand by your family no matter the cost? And how far would you go to protect the people who have been loyal to you? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories that show the power of loyalty, family, and the consequences of letting jealousy get in the way.